Really excited today that we have the opportunity to talk with Anthony Caporrino, Managing Director and co-leader of U.S. Transaction Advisory Group at Alvarez Marsal. Uh, Alvarez Marsal, a global professional services firm specializing in turnaround management, performance improvement, and advisory services. Anthony, welcome. Good morning. Really excited to talk with you today.
Thanks, Zach. Pleasure to be here.
Anthony, can you start by telling us a little bit more about your role at Alvarez Marsal?
Sure. I'm the co-leader of the U.S. Transaction Advisory Group here at A&M, and we work with private equity funds, sovereign wealth, and family offices to help them across the transaction lifecycle, providing buy-side due diligence, financial due diligence services, operational improvement, and sell-side assistance. We partner up with other parts of A&M to bring that value proposition to them, predominantly on the operational side, on the tax side, and provide an integrated offering to our clients that meshes financial, tax, and operational solutions as they consider and hold and then exit investments.
Awesome.
Here in the U.S., we have over 500 professionals. Globally, we are 1,200 transaction professionals in the United States, EMEA, India, Asia, LATAM, Australia, Canada, and soon to be Japan.
Anthony, can you talk to us just a little bit about your journey and your time at A&M and maybe what led you to kind of where you stand now as the managing director and co-leader?
Sure. I've been with A&M for 19 years, a little over 19 years now. I was here at the outset in the formation of the Transaction Advisory Group. And coming to a firm like A&M was very attractive. I spent time at the Big Four prior to that, both at Anderson to begin my career and then Ernst & Young. Subsequent to Anderson, I also spent a little bit of time doing some restructuring work. But the opportunity to come to A&M and build a business was very attractive. To continue to work with private equity to provide back then, 19 years ago, what was a new type of offering, providing that integrated offering that I mentioned across the transaction life cycle. And no one at the time provided that level of service, combining those three areas. And today, while others claim to do it, they don't do it in the way that we do, just given our operational heritage and the caliber of operational expertise that we have. And so the ability to bring an offering like that to an industry that was brand new was very attractive. To be able to start a business and build a business over 19 years with my partners was very attractive. And it goes to show and very much is aligned with the entrepreneurial spirit of A&M. Even though I'm a CPA by trade and I worked at two of the Big Four accounting firms, but part of me has that entrepreneurial spirit, and that's very much in line with the people we have, our strategy, and growing a business with the support of a larger global firm.
Can you talk a little bit about your experience working with Vaya from a coaching perspective? Maybe what some of your takeaways have been, what your insights have been in that time working with Vaya.
Sure. I've been working now with Vaya and specifically Paul Eccher, its founder, for about 9 years now. And I started working with them really at the time that was a transition time for me in my career. I started working with Vaya once I became the leader of the U.S. Transaction Group about 9 years ago. Prior to that, I was a line MD executing, and then while I was on the group's executive committee, I was not the U.S. leader, and I began to work with Vaya once I was appointed to be the U.S. leader. And it was very much, I think, a critical time for me to develop more of a strategic mindset and skill set to lead a U.S. practice. And Paul was very instrumental in helping me develop many of those skills. I was part of an overall program to all of our MDs that we offer Vaya coaching to, and it was important for us to do that at that point in our history. And as our professionals get promoted to MD, we put them through an executive coaching program to help them with a new role. And while I was already an MD, when I started working with Paul, I was, as I said, not the leader. So it was very instrumental for me to start to develop that mindset, the skill set to think more like a leader and bring out the tendencies that were inside me, but perhaps I never put to use because the role was not that of a leader prior to 9 years ago. So it's been a great experience. I continue to work with him one-on-one periodically throughout the year, and it's very helpful for me to continue to hone my skills, to continue to further develop strategically. That never ends, no matter how long you've been a leader, and I find it to be very helpful. I also find it to be helpful to bounce ideas and questions off of, given his perspective. He works in Vaya in general, work with a lot of large corporations in various industries with different types of leaders. So to get that perspective on certain issues that I may be dealing with in my practice is very helpful. And Paul's been a great mentor, a coach, and provides a really good perspective outside of A&M that is very useful to me inside of A&M.
You mentioned that it's made a really big impact in terms of kind of shifting you towards a more strategic thinker and leader. Are there maybe any specific moments that you think of where coaching helped make a measurable difference for you?
There's many. I remember one pretty specifically, and probably remember it because it seems very simplistic, but I don't think prior to having done it myself, I did it often enough or even did it at all. And now I try and make those recommendations to our people as they consider things. But one exercise I did with Paul to better prioritize my time was look at my calendar and look at all the things that I was involved in, had a call on, a meeting, spent time on over the last, say, 6 to 9 months at the time I was doing the exercise, and categorize what was strategic that I myself had to handle, what was something that perhaps I could delegate to others, and what wasn't really valuable that didn't really have to have my involvement at all. And that was, it seems like a very simple exercise, but you often get wrapped up in the busyness of a day, of a week, of a month, and sometimes your time gets manipulated in ways that isn't the most valuable through no fault of anyone, but you get caught up in sometimes doing things that perhaps others can do, and you can provide a different type of guidance and leadership. So that was a very useful exercise. Again, it seems very simplistic, but when you actually spend the time to do it and realize how you can better manage your time and work smarter, not necessarily work harder, it's actually very powerful. And so I always try and remind people of that example, whether it's new MDs who are promoted into the role, whether it's experienced MDs who are looking to develop others and give them those types of examples and guidance that can help them in ways better harness their time and harness their skill set to think more strategically.
It's such an important thing that you call out, and the impact that it has on the team is significant. I'm curious if you've seen any impacts on your leadership team as a whole, or more broadly, as a result of some of the coaching. Maybe any sort of team performance alignment or cultural shifts or changes that you've seen as well.
I have. Everyone develops differently as part of the coaching program. Everyone depending on the individual, receive various points of feedback that are different amongst the group. But I have seen more of a strategic mindset in many of them and an openness to change. And I think perhaps maybe the most important aspect, I have seen a greater self-awareness on the part of our MD group, understanding what each one's skill set is, understanding where there's a need for development, being able to recognize certain behavioral patterns in oneself that could be worked on for positive or negative, both ways. But I think the biggest step, and I can speak from personal experience, it was becoming more self-aware. How you present yourself, how you think, how you react to certain situations, slowing down, even if it means slowing down by a few seconds before you react. Just having that capability to become self-aware, more self-aware. I have seen a noticeable difference in most people who have gone through the Vaya program.
You know, one of the things I'm curious about, I don't know what other coaching experiences you've had to compare the Vaya approach to, but I'd be curious, what has stood out to you about Vaya's approach to coaching.
There are many things that over the years I've found to be helpful. I would say if I had to summarize in one aspect, the overall benefit, I would say that the solutions and the advice is very practical. It's a good mix between, I would say, uh, theoretical and practical. So a good dialogue with various ideas, but also very much a focus on how to implement those in a way that is practical and is not going to feel too overwhelming. And I've dealt with many executive coaches over the years. You always want to try and find the right balance between academic and execution, for lack of a better term. And I think Vaya does that really well to have that right level of balance so that the counsel and the advice given is easily adaptable and can be implemented without, in my opinion, a ton of effort. And it's not too theoretical. And I think the ability for Vaya to understand our business and the challenges that we all face in it is helpful. They're quick learners, and I think they can and have shown the ability to give advice, but is tailored to what we do and can be executed in ways that are very practical.
What would you say to another leader who's considering executive coaching for themselves or their team? What advice might you give?
Be open to change. And I think that becomes the most important first step. If you're not open to change, I think you're more than likely going to waste your time and money because you're just going to revert to doing things the way you've typically done them, which might have helped you get to the point where you are, but it may not help you get to the next level or the next challenge in your career. So you have to be open to change and be willing to be vulnerable. Part of the interesting aspect of at least our program, it involved in step one, identifying a handful of peers, a handful of superiors, and a handful of people working underneath you to give unfiltered feedback. And that sometimes is difficult to absorb. And when you read it and think about it, it's natural to become defensive about it and perhaps say, I don't do that, or that's not true. But you have to be open to taking it in and open to the fact that this is all part of a benefit and ways to improve. So unless you're open to change, it's not going to make much of a difference. So that is that is, in my opinion, one important and maybe arguably the most important piece of advice. Go into it with an openness to potentially change. Go into it with a level of vulnerability and don't be defensive about it. And I think if you bring that mindset to a coaching session or a program, more than likely you'll get some benefit out of it.
My last question for you, Anthony, how do you plan to continue applying what you've gained through coaching in the future?
As I said before, I think development and the need for coaching never really goes away. Even as an experienced leader, there are always areas to improve. So uh, refreshing and going back to certain lessons learned over the years. I keep a handful of notes. I refer back to them periodically. I think keeping, even after perhaps a formal program is complete, keeping a dialogue every couple months with an abbreviated session here and there is always helpful. I think it's helped me just maintain being grounded and maintaining that mindset of listening and opening myself up to further development and change. So that's always important, at least for me. You never want to go through a program and take all the time and effort, and then when it's done, it kind of fades into the past as time goes on. So I think it's important to refresh it every once in a while. I think it's important to keep a structured note taking exercise, whether it's a journal, whether it's a document on your computer, but spending some time regularly to reflect. And that could be daily for a few minutes by taking a journal. It could be weekly, it could be monthly, but taking the time for spacious thinking and absorbing what you've learned and constantly looking at ways in which you can apply the lessons learned. And it's hard sometimes in the hustle and bustle of a day and a week and a month, especially in our field. There isn't really a schedule. You're reacting to client demands. You're reacting to deal timelines that pop up, but you have to be prioritizing that self-reflection and spacious thinking so that you have the ability to really utilize what you've learned.
Awesome. Well, we really appreciate the time, Anthony, and appreciate you taking a few minutes here to chat with us this morning. Any other last thoughts or anything else you want to share in terms of your overall experience?
The only other thing I would say, number one, I want to thank Vaya and Paul specifically. The other thing too, if you look at the way he's built the business and at the end of the day, he is somewhat of an entrepreneur in nature. He's built this firm and this practice over the years, and he's successful. But uh, he's been very approachable, and I think what he's built doesn't necessarily come out in his approach, and I mean that in a compliment. He's humble. He is very open to delivering advice and a point of view in ways that don't alienate you. And I would highly recommend that if leaders are contemplating coaching, at least for me, that's the style that I was looking for and the style that I think works well for me. So uh, he's done a really nice job of not only imparting his wisdom, but delivering it in a way that's extremely helpful. And I compliment him on building that business over the years. I think sometimes you forget what it takes, uh, but if you look at what he's done and the success of the firm, it's very impressive. So compliments to him and the work of all his people and what you all have done.
Well, thank you so much, Anthony. Like I said, we really appreciate it, and we appreciate the time.